It's September 25th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with Israeli attacks on Lebanon. Israeli military continued to trade fire with Hezbollah for the second straight day on Tuesday, leaving nearly 560 people dead. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made clear the war is not with Lebanon, but with Hezbollah. The 79th UN General Assembly is in full swing, with world leaders addressing geopolitical risks and challenges. Israeli attacks on Gaza and Lebanon dominated the first day of the leaders' discussions. South Korea's top envoy to the U.S., Cho Hyun-dong, says Seoul and Washington are maintaining an unwavering readiness posture around the clock against potential provocations from North Korea, saying there have always been possibilities of such North Korean provocations during periods of government transition in the U.S. We start in Lebanon, where Israel and Hezbollah continue to exchange fire for yet another day on Tuesday. Our Choi Soo-hyung reports.
Israel has continued Operation Northern Arrows, the airstrikes targeting Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Lebanese Health Ministry said at least 569 people have been killed in 2 days. Israeli military spokesperson Daniel Hagari has stated that Ibrahim Kobaisi, one of Hezbollah's commanders, was killed. He said the commander was responsible for multiple attacks on Israel, including the rocket attacks on the city of Haifa. On Tuesday local time, Israel carried out airstrikes targeting rocket launchers, command centers and weapons storage sites in several areas of southern Lebanon, the eastern Bekaa Valley and the capital Beirut. The Israeli military said it used 2,000 rounds of ammunition to strike about 1,500 terrorist infrastructure targets in 1 day, and that it is continuing the attacks.
We aim for the operation to be short as possible. That's why we're attacking with great force. Our mission, at the end of the day, is to achieve the goals of the war and to return the residents in the north safely to their houses.
Hezbollah is firing back. Hagari said that around 300 rockets were fired towards Israel and 6 civilians and soldiers were lightly injured. Hezbollah-run Al-Manar TV says the group launched rockets targeting an Israeli explosive factory. Hezbollah also claimed to have attacked an Israeli military base using its new Fadi-3 rockets. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday that Israel will continue its attacks on Hezbollah. During a visit to an Israeli military intelligence base, Netanyahu stated that Israel is at war with Hezbollah, not Lebanon. The international community is working to reduce tensions. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Lebanon is at the brink and people of the world cannot afford Lebanon to become another Gaza. U.S. President Joe Biden stated full-scale war is not in anyone's interest and a diplomatic solution is still possible. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
More than 130 leaders are flocking to New York to deliver a series of speeches at the 79th UN General Assembly. And this year, discussions are looking to be heavier than ever, with the world facing unprecedented geopolitical risks. We're joined by Voice of America correspondent Chris Keskehel. Good to have you back, Chris.
Good to be with you.
So what is this year's edition all about? Let's start with that.
Well, this year's theme is Leaving No One Behind, acting together for the advancement of peace, sustainable development, and human dignity for present and future generations. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric gave this update earlier today. There are 194 speakers, including 76 heads of state and 42 heads of government, but only 19 women, she added sadly. But flashpoints across the globe are already dominating the discussion among world leaders, namely that widening conflict in the Middle East and Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the gathering, "We can't go on like this," and he went on to condemn the nations which have invaded other nations without regard for the welfare of the civilians. He singled out the wars in Ukraine, Gaza, and the conflict along the Israel-Lebanon border. Now, diplomats will also discuss the war in Sudan, Despite multiple international initiatives, there has been no ceasefire there amid 17 months of fighting that has displaced more than 10 million people and pushed millions of them into hunger.
Well, like you said, world leaders are delivering their speeches this week. What did U.S. President Joe Biden have to say at what is his very last appearance as president at the event?
Yeah, that's correct. This is President Biden's final address, and he said the world is at an inflection point in history. He warned against the full-scale war in Lebanon and said it's time to end the conflict in Gaza. He said, quote, "A full-scale war is not in anyone's interest," while adding that a diplomatic solution is still possible. On Gaza, he urged the parties to finalize the terms of a ceasefire and hostage release that has been endorsed by the UN Security Council. But for a little background, top officials told the White House that any kind of deal would not happen before Biden's term ends in January.
You know, on top of that, the Ukraine war is topping the agenda as well. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky is once again calling on world leaders for utmost support for his country, isn't he?
Yes. And after thanking Ukraine's allies for their support in his speech to the UN Security Council today, Zelensky appealed to countries in the global south, calling on Brazil, India, and countries across Africa and Latin America to increase pressure on Russia to halt the war, saying that all countries are equally important for peace without exceptions. Now, VOA's Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb is reporting that Washington is set to provide Ukraine with $375 million in new military aid, and we could see that announcement as soon as tomorrow here. That would be the largest U.S. contribution to the war effort in Ukraine since May. One official tells VOA that the package could include air-to-ground munitions for F-16 fighter jets. Now, this is important because it would let Ukraine's pilots operate away from the front lines and Russian air defenses. Zelensky is also scheduled to meet this week on Thursday with U.S. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris at the White House. Officials say Ukraine's president will lay out his peace plan and call on Washington to lift its restriction on long-range missiles. Right now, U.S. policy does not allow Ukraine to use long-range weapons deep into Russia because of fear of escalating Russia, and Russian leader Vladimir Putin has already said that he would take such a move as an escalation.
Right. And North Korea yet again decided not to dispatch its official representative to this year's event. That's for the 6th straight year. Now, who's attending and what is he expected to argue for the regime?
Well, so far, North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui has noticeably been absent from the UN General Assembly, despite some analysts and observers saying that she would attend for the first time in 6 years and the first foreign minister to attend the UN General Assembly and speak to it since Ri Yong-ho 6 years ago. Cho had just wrapped up a visit to Russia seeking BRICS membership, suggesting that Pyongyang wants to ally itself with the global south, but analysts say membership in that bloc of nations is really unlikely. Now, North Korea is next on the list of scheduled speakers. They're scheduled to speak next Monday, which is September 30th, and North Korean ambassador to the UN, Kim Song, will likely deliver the speech in Cho's absence. Amid the heightened tensions on the Korean Peninsula and the stalled nuclear diplomacy between Pyongyang and Washington. Now, this speech will also take place in the middle of the U.S. election, suggesting that North Korea wants to send a message to its adversary, the U.S.
Definitely. All righty, Chris, thank you so much for the report today. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Good to be with you.
South Korean ambassador to the U.S. Cho Hyun-dong raised the possibility of a major provocation by North Korea during the upcoming U.S. presidential election, adding Seoul and Washington will maintain a 24-hour response posture through information sharing and cooperation. Speaking to Korean reporters in Washington on Tuesday, Cho said that Pyongyang has previously conducted provocation during periods of government change in Washington. with the North recently unveiling its highly enriched uranium production facility and a road mobile launcher for intercontinental ballistic missiles. Seoul and Washington are evaluating it as a precursor to a major provocation, such as a 7th nuclear test or an ICBM launch. And here in Seoul, defense officials of South Korea and the U.S. put their heads together and agreed on the need to secure tight cooperation, especially against diverse changes in North Korean provocations, including the regime's flying of trash-carrying balloons. Our correspondent Kim Jung-seo reports.
The 25th Korea-U.S. Integrated Defense Dialogue took place in Seoul from Monday to Tuesday, where senior defense officials from both nations reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening their bilateral security alliance. South Korea's Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy Cho Chang-nae and the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia, Anka Lee, discussed growing threats from North Korea. A central focus of the discussions was reinforcing the defense vision of the U.S.-ROK alliance. The vision includes 3 core objectives: enhancing extended deterrence against the North, modernizing the military alliance through technological cooperation, and expanding security ties with other like-minded nations in the region. Both sides expressed deep concerns over the advancements in North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, including recent space launch attempts. The dialogue also addressed North Korea's continued sending of trash-carrying balloons across the border. The officials condemned these actions, saying they undermine peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The officials also stressed the importance of a coordinated response to the North's gray zone provocations, which include cyber attacks, electromagnetic warfare, and escalating tensions along the northern limit line, a disputed maritime boundary between the 2 Koreas. South Korea urged North Korea to respect the NLL's crucial role in maintaining regional peace and stability. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
A recent CNN poll shows U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris with a 1 percentage point lead over former President Donald Trump, while a Reuters polls indicate her with a 7 percentage point lead. Our Lee Seung-jae zooms in on the latest polls.
With around 6 weeks to go until the U.S. presidential elections in November, many pundits expect the race to be one of the closest. However, recent election polls show contrasting results, making it even more difficult to predict the outcome of the presidential race. According to the results of a poll conducted by CNN and SSRS from September 19th to the 22nd on 2,074 registered voters across the U.S., Democratic Party candidate Kamala Harris received 48% support, while Republican Party candidate Donald Trump received 47%. However, the lead was much larger in a recent poll conducted by Reuters and Ipsos. The poll, conducted on 1,029 people nationwide from September 21st to the 23rd, Harris received 47% support, while Trump received 40%, showing a 7 percentage point lead for the U.S. vice president. With such a tight race, winning key battleground states will be crucial for the candidates. However, even among the 7 battleground states, both Harris and Trump are neck and neck, with many results within the polls' margins of error. A recent poll by the New York Times and Siena College showed Trump with marginal leads in 3 of the 7 contested states: Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Harris also leads Trump in 3 states: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, while the 2 candidates are tied in Nevada. A total of 94 electoral votes are up for grabs in those 7 battleground states. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Yoon on Tuesday held a banquet with key figures of the People Power Party, aimed at encouraging unity and harmony with the ruling party 2 months after its leadership race. Yoon's spokesperson said PPP leader Han Dong-hoon, floor leader Chu Kyung-ho, and new members of the recently appointed leadership were invited. Han has reportedly been pushing for a separate meeting with the president to address their differences over the Yoon administration's medical reform amid its ongoing standoff with junior doctors. While that meeting has not taken place, Yoon appeared to show his goodwill by saying the beef and pork served during the meal was chosen as the party leader enjoys meat. The meal, held in a garden outside the presidential office, also did not feature alcohol to reflect Han's dietary preferences. Yoon also touched upon issues such as inter-party relations with the opposition, the upcoming parliamentary audit, and his visit to the Czech Republic last week. Wrapping up the evening with coffee, Yoon said he hopes to meet with second- and third-time lawmakers next time. More support will be on the way for young people who are struggling to find jobs. The government and the ruling party agreed to back those in need by expanding the related budget. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hu has more.
To help young South Koreans who belong to socially vulnerable groups, the government and ruling party officials decided on Tuesday to work on revising relevant laws to provide better support. Ministers of Welfare and Employment and leaders of the ruling People Power Party agreed to push for a change to the existing act for the support of vulnerable young people, to foster equal opportunities for those in low-income groups, those who are taking care of family members in need, or those who are socially isolated and staying at home. As part of the effort, they are pushing to expand the employment budget for next year to better address youth unemployment. The plan is to bolster the 2025 budget by 16% compared to this year, to above 2.2 trillion Korean won. The Employment Ministry will use the budget to offer tailored job counseling for over 240,000 students and graduates. Furthermore, they will create a database of graduates to find talented people who are unemployed and help them find work.
The Ministries of Employment and Education will cooperate to discover young people in prolonged unemployment since graduation.
The Ministry of SMEs and Startups plans to share job announcements at 30,000 model small and medium-sized companies with good working environments and launch a special savings deposit program for those working in them. Meanwhile, the ruling party pointed out the need to work on the structural issue over the long term.
The anxiety among the younger generation is no mere personal issue, but a structural problem of our society. We will take the initiative to lead the problem-solving process from the viewpoint of these young people.
Tuesday's announcement followed a recent alarming survey result from Statistics Korea, which found that over 80,000 young people in South Korea had not sought work for at least 3 years since graduation, and instead spent most of their time at home isolated from society. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Xiang, and this is The World Now. Now, Tropical Storm John, which made landfall in Mexico's southern Pacific coast on Monday as a Category 3 hurricane, unleashed heavy rains as it moved inland, causing at least 3 deaths with dangerous levels of flooding expected. By Tuesday morning, the remnants of the storm brought strong winds and dumped heavy rain of over 250 millimeters on parts of Guerrero and Oaxaca, 2 of the poorest states in Mexico. 2 people died after a mudslide buried a house, while a woman was also killed when a wall collapsed on her house, with all 3 deaths reportedly occurring in Guerrero State. The storm made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, with wind speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour on Monday, raising fears of a repeat of Hurricane Otis last October, which quickly transformed from a tropical storm into a Category 5 hurricane and devastated the coast of Oaxaca to Acapulco. Forecasters predict heavy rain of up to 500 millimeters through Thursday in the region, with a high risk of flash flooding and mudslides. Now, OPEC launched its 2024 World Oil Outlook in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro on Tuesday, where it was met by climate activists staging protests. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries' latest report, published on Tuesday, doubled down on forecasts that global oil demand will continue to grow to 2050. According to the report, world oil consumption is set to increase to some 120.1 million barrels per day by middle of the century, a 20% increase from current figures. Climate protesters were both inside and outside the venue, and when a speech by OPEC Secretary General Haitham Al-Ghais got off to a shaky start with the podium lights turning off and a microphone failure, a protester ran on stage with a banner that read "Planning Climate Catastrophes" before being escorted out. Outside the event venue in Rio, a small group of Greenpeace activists staged a protest holding signs and images of environmental damage caused by the oil industry. A private hearing that will determine who gains control of Rupert Murdoch's global publishing and television empire concluded on Monday in a courtroom in Reno, Nevada. According to the New York Times, which obtained copies of the sealed court documents, 93-year-old Murdoch is attempting to change the terms of his family trust, which holds large stakes in News Corp, the owner of Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, so that upon the billionaire's death, the media companies remain under the control of his eldest son, Lachlan Murdoch. But standing in Lachlan's way is an irrevocable trust Murdoch set up during his second divorce, which states that 4 of his eldest children will receive equal shares in the company upon his death. Now finally to Qatar, where thousands of teddy bears have gone on display in downtown Doha to pay tribute to children killed in Gaza since the start of the Israel-Hamas conflict. In an exhibition titled Echo of Lost Innocence, 15,000 teddy bears wearing black t-shirts with the message, "I'm not just a number, I am human with an identity," went on display to raise funds and awareness for the plight of children in Gaza. Local organization Qatar Charity said most of the teddy bears had been sold and that 100% of the proceeds will be donated to children in Gaza. The installation is designed by multidisciplinary Lebanese artist Bashir Mohammed and will be on display until September 26th.
Good morning. After Daecheongbong Peak on Seoraksan Mountain saw the season's first frost yesterday, which was 30 days earlier than usual, we are expecting a summer-like afternoon in most parts with highs rising to the upper 20s after a breezy start. Sunny skies to begin the day, but more clouds will arrive as the day goes on. In Jeju and the south coast could see 20 millimeters of rainfall during the day, with a slim chance but still a possibility of drizzle in the capital area. Air quality will be good nationwide all day. Seoul gets up to 28 degrees Celsius, Busan, Jeju, Daegu topping out at 29 degrees. Afternoon heat sticks around through this weekend before a major cool down follows next week. East of Gangwon-do will see rain on Friday and into Saturday. Meanwhile, we can expect this year's autumn foliage to arrive 2 to 5 days later than usual due to the prolonged heat wave we've had this summer. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.